Good morning, Professor. Here is SIMAR from Group 3 going to present the case of Tran versus Financial Debt Recovery Limited 2000 CAN 22621 Ontario SE. This is a significant ruling in Ontario debt collection law addressing the legal obligations of debt collection agencies and the rights of consumers. The case involves two main individuals in this as Tran versus Financial Debt Recovery. So, the two main individuals included in this case are plaintiff Tran. This is an individual who was pursued for an illegal debt and the challenging validity of the claim, arguing the debt collection agency failed to verify the debt property. And the second one is defendant. It is a Financial Debt Recovery Limited, a debt collection agency that attempted to recover the illegal debt from Tran but failed to prove the sufficient evidence proving debt's validity or proper assignments. There are the two parties where the center of the case, with the court ultimately ruling in favor of Tran, reinforcing consumer protection and the rights of obligations of the debt collectors. The Ontario Supreme Court of Justice The Ontario's Superior Court of Justice was tasked with determining whether the defendant had followed the appropriate legal procedures in pursuing the debt. This case raised the key of legal issues regarding debt verification, due process, and consumer protections, ultimately reinforcing the requirements for debt collectors to provide clear and sufficient evidence of before taking the legal actions. The ruling served as precedent for fair debt collections and parties and strengthened protections for consumers against improper or unjustified collection efforts. Moving further with this case, I want to introduce some of the facts of this case are, like in the case Tran versus Financial Debt Recovery, the dispute arose when Financial Debt Recovery Limited, a debt collector agency, attempted to recover an illegal debt from the plaintiff. But the Tran disputed the validity of the debt, arguing the agency had not provided sufficient proofs that the debt existed or it was properly assigned. Like as I have mentioned that the plaintiff, was contracted by Financial Debt Recovery, the defendant, about the illegal debt. And the second fact that you were saying on the screen that the defendant was hired by the third party to recover the debt from Tran. That is unusual in this case. Moreover, they failed to verify the legitimacy of the claim before initial recovery efforts. The plaintiff maintained that the agency's actions were improper and did not comply with the required legal procedures. Like the plaintiff.
Hi, this is SIMRANPREET KAUR, ID number 4394101. In this video, I am going to explain legal issues in Tran versus Financial Debt Recovery Limited. The first one is the court considered whether the defendant's communication, especially those with Tran's employer, were defamatory and damaged his reputation. The defendant's false allegation that Tran was looking for work with a rival company and that he had a court order against him caused harm to Tran's reputation. Second one is intentional infliction of emotional distress. The court examined whether the Tran had suffered enough emotional distress as a result of defendant's behavior to be deemed extreme and outrageous. This court examined the defendant's harsh and persistent collection practices, including as harassment and threats. The third one is the court assessed whether the defendant's actions, such as getting in touch with Tran's workplace and making untrue claims, constituted an infringement on his right to privacy. Now I am going to explain legal principles established in Tran versus Financial Debt Recovery Limited. This case set a precedent for how debt collection agencies must conduct themselves within the bounds of the law. It emphasized the importance of respecting individuals' privacy, preventing defamatory conduct, and ensuring that emotional distress caused by aggressive debt collection is legally actionable. The case also reinforced the idea that debt collectors can be liable for unlawfully interfering with the debtors' economic relationships, particularly when their actions cause a reputational or financial harm.
So, in this case study, the Ontario Superior Court ruled in favor of plaintiff Tran, dismissing the debt collection claim. The court found that Defendant Financial Debt Recovery Limited failed to provide sufficient evidence that Tran owed the debt and did not show they had the legal right to collect it. Additionally, the defendant did not follow the necessary legal procedure for debt collection. The ruling emphasized that debt collection agencies must verify debts and follow proper procedures to protect consumers and ensures fairness. Now I am talking about the impacts of debt collection. By emphasizing that agencies must verify the debt's existence and validity before taking action, the court highlighted the importance of following due process, and failure to do so could lead to dismissal of claims and legal consequences. The case reinforced consumer protection laws, ensuring individuals are not wrongfully pursued for unverified debts. It set a legal precedent encouraging debt collectors to adopt transparent complaint practices and avoid improper tactics, strengthening consumer rights. Thank you.
Now I am talking about the Terence arguments and FDRL arguments. First of all, Terence arguments. Terence arguments FDRL was aggressive and intimidating methods, violating consumer protection laws. The amount of debt FDRL was pursuing was incorrect. And second, FDRL arguments. The debt amount was correct and accurately recorded. Their actions were legally following proper debt collection procedures. Now I am talking about the similar cases and precedent. We have some similar cases and precedent. Consumer Credit Act 1974 protects consumers from legal debt collections practices relevant to trans cases harassment. And second, Office of Fair Trading vs. Total House Improvements rule against unfair debt collections methods similar to Tran's claim. These cases emphasize the need for collector to follow fair and legal practices.
In the case Tran v. Financial Debt Recovery Limited, the court was asked to consider the enforceability of a judgment against a defendant, particularly focusing on the issues related to debt recovery practices and the fairness of the actions of the creditors. The conclusion in this case emphasized the legal principles surrounding the collection of debts and the importance of ensuring that debt recovery practices commonly with legal requirements. The court ruled that the creditors, Financial Debt Recovery Limited, had acted with its legal rights and had followed the necessary procedures for collecting the debt owned by the defendant Tran. However, the court underscored the need for creditors to act in good faith, avoid abusive practices, and adhere to the standards set out in debt collection legislation. The decision also addressed the limits of enforcement, acknowledging that while creditors have a right to collect debt, this must be balanced with the protection of debtor rights. In summary, the court affirmed the legitimacy of the creditors' actions but cautioned against overstepping legal boundaries in debt recovery practices. Now we will move towards the Q&A slide. The first question is that, what are your thoughts on the court's ruling? The second question is, should debt collectors be held to a stricter standard of proof? The last question is, how does this case impact modern debt collection practices? Thank you.